Hello and welcome to Sip Sip Hooray, the podcast for people who like wine, but not all the stuffiness that sometimes goes with it. If you're listening to our podcast today, chances are you love wine or you're at least curious about it. Well, the thing about wine is that the beverage has alcohol in it, and that means drinking responsibly is important. But for whatever reason, it's not something we talk a lot about in the wine world. But today, we're going there. Our guest is a dynamic force in the industry. Her focus is communications, marketing, and PR, but her side gig is hosting an online community called A Balanced Glass. Her name is Rebecca Hopkins. We're so happy to have her with us today, and we can't wait for you to get to know her as well. So let's help our listeners. Oh, I got ahead of myself. We are the two Marys who like to eat, drink, and be merry. I am Mary Babbitt.
And I'm Mary Orland. Thanks for remembering me, Babs. Anyway, so we are so thrilled to get into this topic. Can you have a balanced and healthy life with wine? Rebecca Hopkins says, yes, it's possible. She created A Balanced Glass, which is a community comprised of winemakers, vineyard workers, managers, cellar workers, public relations, media, distribution, wine shops, bars, restaurants, tasting rooms. We are all surrounded by wine. Wine is very accessible, but for those of us who, and quite frankly, it can be a little too much at times. But if there are those of us who want a healthy lifestyle and still work in wine or still enjoy wine with our friends and our family. And if you're listening to this today, we hope to have some really great tips for you and just to raise awareness that it's possible to have a balanced life and have a balanced glass. So there's so much to dive into, how to balance it all. No one has one perfect answer, but Rebecca and her team at A Balanced Glass, or ABG, offer more than a few suggestions on being on the path to a balanced life in wine. So, Beck, welcome to Sip Sip Hooray.
Thank you, Mary, to you both, Marys. And it's such a pleasure to be here. I'm excited for discussing this subject. So thank you.
Yeah, you could tell I was excited to have you here because I got a little bit, as I said, ahead of myself. But no wine involved either, for the record. But let us help our listeners get to know you, Rebecca. Can you tell us about your journey into wine and what got you started working in the wine industry?
Sure. So I actually grew up in Australia, in the wine region of McLaren Vale. I didn't grow up in the wine business. I think the closest thing we got to wine in my family was my father helping to construct the bar at the McLaren Vale Football Club, where we spent a lot of time. But I came to wine as a failed geologist. I wanted to study to be a geologist, but wine was my second option for my university studies. So I started studying. I graduated in the Adelaide University with a degree in wine business and immediately jumped into working in tasting room in McLaren Vale called Wirra Wirra. Amazing wine, still to this day, one of my favorite places to visit. And really worked through small wineries in Australia in various production, sales, marketing, distribution roles until leaping over to the communication side in 2000 when I joined Hardy Wine Company, which is now obviously became Constellation and is now Accolade Wines. So I took a bit of a sidestep from small family wineries into corporate Australian winemaking. And then in 2007, actually moved to the US with Constellation Brands in a communications capacity and spent 5 years at Constellation with brand communications and events and leading that team. And then in 2012, I left and joined Folio Fine Wine Partners, which is an importer, a national importer of family wineries, founded by Michael Mondavi and his family. And actually, only this week, I just left that position after 10 years. So I think in total it's 30 years in the wine business, and I feel like I'm starting all over again with my new career, I guess I'd say. But yeah, it's been wild. It's a great ride.
Very exciting. We want to hear about that and what's next.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I think what A Balanced Glass has really done is shown me a side of the industry that really, I mean, I certainly have learned to know exists over the last 5 years, but really we have a whole part of our industry that really digs into wellness and health and safety and culture and leadership, which is a really, really, really exciting part of the industry. So I'm kind of sitting back for a few weeks and just taking it all in, and then I think we're going to ramp up some of those areas of the business. So,
well, that's fantastic. So, how did you come up with the idea to start A Balanced Glass? What motivated you?
Yeah, it's interesting, Mary. I was actually at a women's conference for wine professionals in 2017, and the conference was fantastic. It was a room full of incredibly motivated female wine professionals, primarily females. I think I saw like 4 or 5 men in the audience. But we were talking about a lot of really topical subjects, of course, equity, inclusion, managing working families, being a woman in the wine business. But no one was really talking about alcohol. And no one was talking about how to manage all of this career aspiration from a health point of view. And I did what I think I often do when subjects trouble me is I wrote about it. And I ended up writing an article that I pitched to a German wine trade magazine called Meininger Wine International. And the editor at the time, Felicity Carter, she dared to publish it. And it asked a lot of the questions that we're talking about, right? Why don't we talk about it? Why is it such a taboo subject? Why is there so much shame around not coping? Why do we judge people that maybe don't look the way we do? Mm-hmm. And the article was incredibly well received from all the readership. And so it caused a lot of discussion that then had a follow-up article the following month that really started to express some of people's personal experiences from, salespeople really feeling troubled that they were not coping with their lifestyle to, family impacts of drinking in the workplace. And I knew we had a problem. It really struck me that there was a way we needed to address this.
Well, for our listeners who are not in the industry, we should explain that when you work in the wine industry, there are all sorts of wonderful, opulent dinners that you are treated to that are just part of the job. You are tasting your product constantly and sharing it with other people so that they can taste the product. You are going to forums and shows and panels where tasting is every step of the way. And if you're selling the wine, you need to be believing in it and talking about it and drinking it. And it can be a lot.
Yeah, you're right, Mary. And I think too, besides the drinking part, to your point, is the eating. Mm-hmm. We are dining. We joke that no one plays that tiny violin when you're dining at the latest Michelin restaurant, right?
Right.
But Ariel,
fair point.
You know well.
Oh, I
right?
know well. I'm like, okay, enough. I don't need any more. No more courses. Please stop.
Yeah. And you're making friends with the wait staff to secretly take it away when no one's looking.
Yes.
Yeah. But it's a very unique industry. There are obviously industries with heavy levels of, say, client hospitality, but the wine business really has a frequency and a volume that is really can't be compared to many other industries I'm aware of. And really that overconsumption or the combination of eating, drinking, maybe you're traveling as a salesperson, maybe you're hosting that dinner and all of a sudden you have 100 people to quote take care of. Maybe you're in a hospitality role where you're working late nights, double shifts. Your end of night shift is a drink, right? Because it's 2 a.m. and you've just finished serving 400 people in your restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
And you need that time to defrag, to calm down and to become back to a mindful place. And it's something that I felt like I always did alone. I learned the hard way. I would, like all of us, we figure it out. And I think part of the impetus for the community aspect of the balanced glass really was to show other people that they weren't the only ones.
Which is such a great message in that industry, because for so many years I've wondered, why don't we talk about overconsumption? Why don't we talk about the impact of all the food, the travel, the wear and tear on your physical body, on your mental health too, because, it's nonstop and there's so many demands. And, at the end of a big tasting, if you're with a group, people say, let's go out and have some more drinks, or let's go get a cocktail. I'm like, you want to be included, but you don't want to drink.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, we also we have to be very careful about the language we're choosing, because we don't want to be alienating or judging people who choose to do things a different way. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of in 2018, when the conference organizer invited me back after causing a bit of a ruckus with the article, they said, well, tell us what we should be doing. And the first session was called Breathwork for Better Business. And it wasn't about drinking and it wasn't about eating. It was about how do you maintain mindfulness when you work in a fast moving industry like we do. Mm-hmm. And then and to do that session, I tapped a good friend of mine, Kathy Hoyha. And Kathy is a meditation teacher. She's a yoga teacher. We call her the yin to my yang. Like, she's the Virgo, I'm the Aquarius. And we just decided that every single day we'd give people just a little tip, just a little idea, a little reminder, something small that could help them be mindful. For anyone who attended, the session that we did at the conference. And that's how the community started. It really started because we decided to kind of take our industry experience, to take our own love of meditation and yoga and mindfulness and put it out there. Because it was still not a subject talked about a great deal. Mindfulness was still a bit like, you got to go on that retreat and sit on the mountain, unless you were really already had a practice, or you were already practicing. And a lot of people who were practicing mindfulness were doing it on their own as well. So it gave kind of us an opportunity to coalesce the professional kind of interest with your personal approach to your health and well-being, and then overlay that into a community that would say, hey, like, so glad you're here. Let's talk about it. Let's do some stuff.
Well, and by being mindful, it's probably a more natural path to balance and moderation, because you're literally thinking about what you're doing and thinking about how you feel and how things make you feel and kind of your purpose for the day, right? That the idea of being mindful is staying in the moment and staying present, and not just, like I can be willy-nilly, like, sure, I'll have another glass,
Yeah.
It's not always a mindful thing to.
Right. Well, it's being intentional.
Intentional. Right? That's the word I'm looking for. Yes.
Yeah. And also, that intention changes sometimes. Sometimes you just want to kick back.
Yeah.
Sometimes your friends have come over and you're like, let's just share a bottle and let's just not even talk about what it's, where it comes from or what year it is. And then other times you really want to sit and be mindful and taste mindfully and really understand, like, what's going on behind this glass. What's in it? What do I want to learn about it? But it definitely takes discipline to successfully have a career in the wine business. And to me, that is this mindful approach, this way of understanding, why am I in the industry and what are my values around health and well-being? What's important to me.
Exactly.
What about the big wineries? What is their response to something like this? Do you find that you're well received by people in the industry, not just the salespeople and the people on the hospitality end, but the power people who are running these companies and need to sell their wine?
Yeah. Mary, I will say the conversation has changed dramatically in the last 2 years. And really, what was that's nice to know. Yes, we agree. We have policies in our HR handbooks on page 7, paragraph 5, right?
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of, we got the mandatory stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And really, I think what we're seeing now, which is really the culmination of COVID obviously has impacted our industry at a very deep level in terms of unsettling so much of the foundations that we've had from, financial security to, just channels of sales shuttering and maybe not reopening. But now the conversation around moderation is really becoming a culture conversation of how do I keep my employees safe? How do I make sure their well-being is taken care of? How do I have high-performing individuals? Because at the end of the day, for large corporate wine companies, it's bottom line. The shareholders still, have an enormous influence on the success of the company and how it's perceived. But it's a far more open discussion. It was definitely a HR liability management discussion, 5 years ago. And now it's like, okay, how do we build opportunities for people to feel safe, to feel connected, to have well-being, whether that's financial security, flexibility in the workplace for working families, whether that's diversity, equity, and inclusion, and making sure that voices are heard. And then we have a younger workforce coming into the industry that really have a different set of values and a different interest in how companies run, right? They want transparency. They're looking for corporate social responsibility.
Exactly.
And this all plays into that. And smart companies, really smart companies are getting on board with this discussion being more than just managing what your people are doing. This is about really taking a leadership role.
Well,
that's the stuff that's exciting.
Yeah, helping people to manage their overall lifestyle, which really impacts your effectiveness at work. I mean, if I'm a manager, I would like for my employees or workers to wake up and not have a heavy duty hangover because of an event we did the night before.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. And I think that, that conversation we talked earlier about, we held this survey. I mean, the thing about a balanced glass community, it's more than 2,000 people around the world. 75% of them are based in the US, but we have community members from Italy, UK, Australia, France, Germany, China. And, it's a really diverse group of readers who definitely have opinions. And so we try really hard to have mindful surveys that allow people to have input into kind of what's going on for them, because health's really personal. It's a super personal subject. And particularly in the US, when, our healthcare system is what it is, and we have a lot of people who don't have insurance. And so they're trying to navigate, how do I get help? Who do I turn to? And a lot of that work is community groups who are creating that support for them. And then this is one of many, many examples of groups that are trying to kind of build community by supporting community, by sharing knowledge and sharing resources and tools. And we never set out to kind of do one perfect way. It's more about like, let us show you the path, you choose your adventure. And let's help support you on whatever it is you want to be doing.
I do like that. You're not trying to preach one particular message. You're just putting information out and starting the conversations. And, as you said, it gets very personal with people. And so you're not trying to tell anyone how to do their job or live their lives. And I think that serves you well. One of the things I wanted to ask you was about what I perceive as a trend of lower alcohol wines, and how does that tie into what you're talking about? It seems like people are more interested in finding a way to enjoy their beverage without the big heavy toll on their body.
Yeah, Definitely, we've seen an acceleration of that in the last probably 2 to 3 years. And I mean, the non-alcohol segment is not new. Beers, non-alcohol beers like St. Pauli Girl have been around for decades. But it's always been put on the bottom shelf up the back in the weird part that no one really goes to.
Right.
And so we haven't really allowed a conversation to happen about what is the alternative or what else is out there. I actually find the low alc and no alc segment really exciting because as a wine professional, I'm obsessed by flavor and aroma and texture. And the processes of that, right? Distillation or reverse osmosis, all these different ways that you can create flavor. And I think, again, we have a consumer that's looking for ways to manage their health. We've been through 2 incredibly difficult years where health has been about safety. And people have become a lot more aware of what's going in their body or of what they're consuming, whether that's media, whether that's food, whether that's, wine. And we are really having a consumer tell us as an industry, hey, I'm looking for something different. What do you have? A lot of the innovation in this sector is happening in the spirit side of things. And I think I've done probably a year or so of research on this, and really the extraction of the flavor is a little easier in the spirits world or non-alcoholic spirits than it is in wine. Because of alcohol. Alcohol carries flavor. Alcohol gives volume. Alcohol gives weight. So, and the wine, I mean, low alcohol is a relative term. Mary, you remember we wouldn't have been drinking 17% alcohol Zinfandels 15 years ago, right?
No, not at all.
So,
I also see the pendulum swinging slowly towards more balanced wines too, not such big alcoholic bombs.
The bombs,
right.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Right.
And, there are some companies that have made the entry into the lower ABV alcohol by volume category with wine. And, even Barefoot is getting into the act. So, when somebody as big as Barefoot is doing it, it's beyond just a cool, trendy thing. So I absolutely agree that the demand is there. And also, I think the industry is at a crossroads where millennials are not consuming as much. And they're also drawn to all these low to zero proof beverages. And then we have baby boomers who are aging out of drinking. So I see that what you were saying, Beck, the exciting work is being done really on the spirit side with all these very creative low and zero proof spirits that do a fairly good job of mimicking bourbon, whiskey, and
gin and tequila.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So with wine, I think, it may be a little trickier because a lot of the flavors and especially the aromas are a byproduct of fermentation.
Right. Yeah. And also, we have to remember that as an industry, we wanted people to drink less but better.
Yes.
Right. That's been our drink less but better. Well, they're doing that.
Yes, that's true. Absolutely.
And the innovation in wine, I think we also have to remember that wine lovers see wine as a pretty natural product anyway. So it's seen as something that is natural. It comes from grapes. It is, it has a pretty simple production process. And if you go to a winery, you can see it happening. And so I think the interest of consumers on wine, there is Wine Market Research Council data that says people think wine is generally healthier, quote, than other forms of alcohol. But again, nothing's healthy if you're drinking 3 bottles of it, of course. And so I think that we have a consumer that's younger. We also are now competing with, share of stomach, right? There's cannabis drinks out there. There's functional teas out there. There's, apple cider vinegar based non-alcohols that that kind of do a pretty good job. But Mary, to your point, they don't replicate the aroma. And so people are making decisions based on why am I drinking what I'm drinking and what do I want out of that experience. So and again, it comes back to mindfulness. No.
I was just going to say, so what do you think the industry needs to do to hang on to and increase market share, to keep people interested in wine? What's the path?
Yeah, if I knew that, I'd probably be on a boat in the Maldives. I think what we're seeing is a greater acceptance of this category. It's no longer a fringe category that used to be on the bottom shelf. The innovation, being really aware of the innovation happening, whether it's in packaging type, packaging size, flavor profile, and getting a lot more adventurous. I think the natural wine movement's done a great service to the industry in pushing some of those traditional boundaries. Wine in can. So looking at these alternative ways to enjoy wine and do it in a way that can be fun. It can be engaging. It doesn't need to be stuffy. It doesn't need to be behind, a white tablecloth in a fine dining restaurant. I mean, this is your podcast, right? You're all about wine without the stuffiness. And I think that this category is pushing some buttons that the industry really need to get on board with.
Absolutely.
And to your point about barefoot, I mean, when Gallo's in a category that there's an opportunity because they've never made a decision that has not had an enormous amount of market research behind it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, yeah.
We've been talking about a balanced glass and the industry facing aspect of it, but you also have members in your community who aren't in the wine industry per se.
Yep.
So let's talk about reaching out to them for example, and this is true in both the wine industry and for consumers, these big public tastings, anytime there's a wine competition or something, and all the winners are presented at these huge public tastings. And I'm sure all of us have observed that usually people are not spitting, but they're usually with groups. And are there ways to manage that ahead of time, setting your expectations?
Yeah.
And also other tools that you make available to anyone, that people who are just wine lovers, beverage enthusiasts can also learn from and get support from.
Yeah, sure. So I'll grab the first part of that question, which is around how do you cope when you're going into these large events where, it's an embarrassment of riches. There is so much wine there and you really don't know where to start. Because the reality is when you start tasting and or drinking, your ability of discernment goes away at some point, right? So you need to really set your expectation around your own plan when you're attending an event. So, okay, why am I here? What's my exit plan? How much am I planning to drink? And maybe what's my stop button? I think knowing your own limits or your own desires before you go in is really important. And having, I always have a golden rule, 1-to-1, water to wine. If you're going to a tasting, take a water bottle with you, or they will most often have water available on site. Drink water. It's a silly, simple thing to say, but it is really a way to help metabolize on the physiological level, to help your body metabolize the wine that you're drinking. If you're traveling, if you're going to the tasting with someone else, tell them, say to them, hey, I just want to make sure that I'm going to have a great time. But if you see me getting a little excitable, or maybe we've reached our limit, can you just have a quiet word? I think having a trusted person with you when you're doing these events is important. And then it is actually okay to spit. Spitting wine is something that as a professional you learn how to do, but most people don't. You learn how to spit toothpaste, as a kid.
Right.
Spitting kind of has this really strange social embarrassment. It's hard.
It's gross.
gross. It's gross. And
or people think, oh, you don't like the wine, that's why you're spitting it out. It must be bad.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And that is, I mean, that's something, unfortunately, that really just comes from learned behavior. Spit water in the shower, learn how to spit. If you're at a wine tasting, I think any winemaker or wine professional that sees you spitting will actually, understand why you're spitting, but also, support you in that, because it shows you're being disciplined in how you're tasting, that you really want to enjoy as many wines as you can, and you're not just slugging it back.
And you really want to know what you're tasting, because after a bit, you don't spit, your ability to discern different flavors and everything, it all just starts to taste pretty darn good,
Right. And then, if someone over pours you and they're pouring you big tasting pours and you do feel embarrassed to tip it out, but tip out the wine you don't need. Again, you don't have to drink it all. You don't have to sip it all. You don't have to taste it all.
I think you make such a good point when you say, think about it ahead of time, go in with a plan. It's sort of like plan your drink your plan, but so you know what you want to do, and which doesn't mean don't have fun. And I think that's, again, another important part of your message. You're not trying to tell anyone how to live their life. So if you want to go to the wine thing and make it a party, that's great. Go do that. But if you're trying to find that balance and not overdo it, I love that tip. Think about it ahead before you go in and know what you want.
Yeah. And I'll give you some links to that. We have articles on the website that maybe could go in the show notes for you, but it's also like, what do you do when you have a hangover? Like, how do you deal with the next day if you've had too much? I mean, that's a reality too, and that's okay. So let us help you work that plan out too. So the very pragmatic, simple things that can help you both going in with the plan, to your point, Mary, plan your drink your plan, but also if you kind of fall off the other side, then let's help get you back on. Let's help you get you back to center.
And I think that is really a great example of being a mindful drinker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in terms of kind of simple tips, I have tips that I've kind of set myself along the way of managing an excess of riches. Water to wine, 1-to-1 always. I never drink liquor after dinner. Once I've finished eating, I don't drink. I always try to eat protein-heavy meals instead of big bowls of pasta, which is hard to do, particularly if you're traveling and you have a set menu from a supplier or a winemaker who wants to show you their latest ravioli recipe.
Right.
That's a negotiation where you either eat half or you hide half, or, you just have to figure it out, right?
You hide half. That's been one of my techniques. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, because then someone brings back the plate and asks you why you didn't finish it.
Right.
And then, so that's kind of the immediate consumption, but then there's the mindfulness piece, which a lot of it is hacking your own life, your own day. So for me, I have a meditation app on the home screen of my phone that I have to look at every time I pick up my phone. Almost kind of guilt reverses me into doing some meditation. But,
smart. That's one way to get it done.
Right.
Well, you're also really big into yoga.
Yeah, I am. I'm a great failed yogi. And I'm still at level 1 after 15 years, but it's okay. Every day's new, and I love yoga. Yeah, I think it's a really beautiful. I mean, the physical postures are a really, really great way to check in with your physical health, with your physical body, because that's what carries us around, right? We can think all we want, but our bodies are what keep us upright, and when that's healthy, we have a much better connection with our minds and with the world we're in. So the asana part of the postures of yoga I love, and also the breath work. Breathing has been a lifesaver for stress management for me, and we definitely talk a lot about it because stress is a reality of all of our lives, and it is not the body's natural state to be stressed. So a lot of the ways we try to approach it is, again, you're not going to go and sit on a mountain. You're probably going to sit in the subway. Let us give you pragmatic ways you can manage your breath, your heart rate, lower your, your blood pressure, and get your mind and body back connected. And there's sections of the site that are really well read, because I think people, again, we're all trying to navigate this. We all have our own way. And the fact that you can read about something and read a tip and maybe teach yourself or come back to it is a more gentle way than being lectured about, the right way to be doing things.
That was a perfect segue into the question I wanted to ask, which is about the content on the Balanced Glass website. There's so much there, so many good tips. So talk about the articles themselves. And then a second part of that question is you have community profiles, and I'd love to know more about those.
Sure. Yeah. The community profiles are by far the most popular part of the site, and they're very intentional in that we ask people to be as honest as possible, good, bad, and otherwise, because that's really what connects people to people. And they, you really see people's true stories start to come out when we start to dig into things like, what are you challenged by in your health? What are you inspired by? What's a practical way that you handle your health? And we intentionally work hard to get a diverse group of profile people, because, again, ages, ethnicity, location in the world, job kind of positions, so that we can listen to a grape grower whose experience is probably incredibly different to someone in the wine media. Or we had a Philippe Blanc from Domaine Blanc, who's a Qigong teacher, and he was telling his story about, being a wine grower with his cousin and using Qigong as a way to manage stress. And it's just like, wow, people's stories are so fascinating. And the fact that they choose to share it on the Balanced Glass platform is really meaningful, because it shows that the community are really willing to talk about these things, and we trust them and they trust us, and it's a really good place. We never accept unsolicited, I will write for you for free stuff from content marketing. We just don't believe in that. This is a place that I think is somewhere that we hope you come away being a little bit inspired, or you find something maybe you wouldn't have known. We've had community members, go public with their sobriety on, and ABG was the place that chose to do that. So that's the profiles. And we also, some people are really silly, and we love that too. And then the articles are really, they're a combination of what's topical, what's coming up for us as a community. What are things that are out there, whether it's low ABV, whether it's, sexual harassment scandals, whether it's protecting our AAPI community or our Black community, and what are we doing? They kind of run the gamut, but they center on wellness and keeping people well. And every month we have a guest writer from the industry that generally gives a personal perspective. It's a way for the community profiles to be a little beefier, for people to get into subjects about, whether it's life transition, whether it's about, being furloughed during COVID as a hospitality professional.
Sure.
Just to help people kind of, again, realize they're not alone. And the great beauty is someone from the community always writes to that guest writer and says, thanks. And that's like, that to us is just awesome.
That is huge. You're right.
It's awesome. Yeah.
Well, and your Instagram is chock full of fun tips and little profiles and just great information and fun and easy to digest, and with a focus on positivity and balance.
Yeah. And positivity is key. I think that right now the world's hard enough. We don't need more people telling us that things aren't right. Like, I think we're all aware of that. This is a place where you can come and really find hope and happiness and, learn a bit and have a voice. I think having a voice is very important in our industry.
Right. And includes things like jet lag, 6 tips to take you from fog to fabulous.
Yeah, it's true. And, it's like, it's always, and then Kathy might do a special feature on a breathwork technique, or I might share, 4 breathing techniques to help reduce your stress. Mm-hmm. And we sense check each other. And the beauty about working with Kathy is we know each other well enough. We have a very similar value system about what's important. And so we get our heads together and we go, okay, what's burning right now that we need to talk about? Sometimes it's pleasure and play. I think 3 weeks ago, she wrote about the importance of sex and physical activity. It's like, we're all there for it. We're there for
it. No subject is taboo.
No. I mean, and a lot of the subjects honestly come from the community because they say, hey, you haven't talked about this, or we're having a lot of discussion right now about menopause, and how, let's talk about it. Alcohol has an impact on your health. And women's health has, links to certain types of cancer from alcohol. Mm-hmm. We got to talk about it. We're not shy. We just make sure we've got the right data.
Right.
Yeah. Because people trust us with what we write. So we want to make sure that we're serving the reader.
And it's really important to not be afraid to have the conversations and not be afraid to look at things with open eyes. And I think in the wine industry for too long, no one's talked about the negative impacts of alcohol. And it's such a glamorous world that's created this wine country's lifestyle is very glamorous. It's very seductive. It is aspirational. Mm-hmm. And there's another side to it as well, which is if you overdo it, it's really damaging to your personal life and everything else.
Yeah. And we also have to shine lights on all the aspects of the business and making sure that we have our workers are protected and the agricultural side of the business is really safe and a safe place to be. And, are we becoming a lot more inclusive? I think the beautiful thing is that this subject's now part of the diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging discussion, which it wouldn't have been. 5 years ago, it was a HR topic that was kind of on the agenda, right?
Right. But there was no real focus on it.
Right. And it's going to take time. It's not going to change tomorrow. We still do have a lot of those outward displays of wealth and success and beauty. And because we are lucky that vineyards are located in some of the most extraordinarily beautiful parts of the world. There's a reality behind that says, let's look after the people who are in the business. Let's educate and make sure there's an awareness. And if you are a wine lover and you want to learn more, here's a place you can come that isn't judgmental. It's open-minded, and we're here for it. So.
Yeah, I think that's great. It encompasses so much. And I think the reason the three of us are in the wine industry is there's history, there's culture, it's a science, but it's also an art. Yeah. And it's always changing. And there's just so many fascinating people who come together to make this industry, as Beck, you've used this word, magical.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, how lucky are we, right?
Mm-hmm. So what do you see is next for you, Beck? Having departed from Folio, as you look ahead, what's around on the horizon, or do you not know yet?
Well, I'm not going to stop talking about this subject, that's for sure. I'm actually going home to Australia next week to see my family. I haven't seen them for 2 years.
Oh, nice.
So that's important to me. And doing projects that are really in line with my values around, wellness, well-being, mindfulness, health, inclusion. I think I've managed to create a career that's given me an opportunity to have a platform, and it's something that I take responsibility in doing. I do some mentoring work. I'd like to do more, and then just keep exploring this wonderful world we have. I think, you know, the more that we do what we love, the work happens, right? It's not really work then. It's the calling. So yeah, I'd like to do more meditation. I've committed to doing more yoga. I've been a terrible yogi lately. But yeah, what's next? I think more of the discovery, more of the learning. I'm really into learning a lot about this low alc, non alc category. I've tasted some awesome products. I've tasted some terrible products.
Oh, sure.
And it's interesting, you know, it's a flavor thing. I'm like, let's see what's next.
Oh, I hope they get really good at that. I really hope that can be an emerging, really fantastic category of wine. You know, I think it'd be so great.
I think it's evolving for sure.
Yeah, it is. Mm-hmm. And the beauty is, as we've seen, like with all major technological advancements in the wine business, whether it's refrigeration or fermentation, we're a clever bunch. You know, we work these things out, and I think there'll be new technology that will help develop the category that we shouldn't be afraid of. You know, let's keep wine lovers loving wine in whatever form as much as we do. You know,
absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah. So,
well, the website is A Balanced Glass, and you can also find it on Instagram and Twitter. The Facebook forum is for people in the industry, and so that's a Facebook group that is exclusive to the industry. But there's plenty of great, easily accessible information on Rebecca's website at balancedglass.com. I got that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Balancedglass.com. And if we do have listeners who are interested in the Facebook group, just pop your little comment when we ask you kind of why you'd like to join. You know, just comment that you heard this podcast interview, or you're interested in learning more, and you are more than welcome. You're more than welcome. Yeah,
well, that's very generous. Thank you for that invitation.
That's what we're here for.
Well, we thank you so much for this conversation today, Beck. It's been so great getting to know you and to learn more about your mission. I just love the idea that you have, frankly, I thank you for your courage in being able to open up the discussion of bringing balance and wellness into the wine world, and being honest enough to say, wow, this is a lot. This is, as you said, an excess of riches sometimes in the wine world, and sometimes our approach to wine hasn't always been the healthiest. So good for you for bringing a healthier outlook to it. And you are clearly ringing a bell that people can hear, because you're being very well received, and people want to share their stories with you and hear others too. So good for you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mary. And to you both. I mean, I think that the opportunity to have these discussions is, I know if Kathy was on this call with us, she would be ringing the bell as well. I mean, it's something we believe in. We know we can't do it alone. It's the beauty of community, is we're all in on it. And, there's a place for everyone. So let's keep going.
Right. And kudos to you and Kathy for creating a safe environment for people to share their concerns, their triumphs, because you have a lot of people sharing their success stories too, in managing to create a balanced life around wine.
Yep, exactly. And more of it. You know, there's a great piece that Rachel Del Rocco wrote. She was a wine editor who's now sober, and she wrote about that journey. So we have a lot of courageous people who really want to put their story out there in the hopes it inspires other people. So that's kind of that's definitely our objective, is to have these conversations become more normalized. So thank you for the opportunity to have this discussion, because it's forums like this that help us to really amplify the message. So thank you to you both.
Oh, thank you, Beck, and good on you. Enjoy the trip home to Australia.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again for joining us today. Sip, sip, hooray, and cheers to you, Beck.
Sip, sip, hooray.
Sip, sip, hooray.
Well, Mary Babbitt, I am so inspired what Beck Hopkins shared with us and what she's doing with A Balanced Glass.
Yeah, I think it's about time. And I'm so glad, like I said, that she had the idea, the courage, and the gumption to say out loud, hey, do we have a problem with alcohol? Can we enjoy wine and not have it ruin lives? And does the industry need to take a closer look at how to create balance and wellness and help their employees,
And I think the answer to all those questions is yes. And through A Balanced Glass, they are offering a path to achieve health and well-being while not, and they don't advocate giving up wine. None of us are doing that, but it's how to incorporate it as part of your healthy, balanced life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's really careful about saying we're not trying to tell people what to do. It's, everyone makes their own personal choices with their lives and how they want to live them. So she's just putting information out there and trying to help make it easier for people to find that balance.
Right.
Well, anyway, that is going to do it for our show today. Thank you so much for joining us. You can, of course, find us on social media. We are Sip Sip Hooray Podcast on Instagram and Facebook.
And we are Sip Sip Hooray, the number 1 on Twitter. And Beck mentioned a few times we'd have some things in our show notes relevant to today's podcast. So please check out the show page at sipsiphooray.podcast.com. And also, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends. And please subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. We'd appreciate it.
And as you enjoy your next glass of wine, do it in moderation, and you'll enjoy it even more. So thank you again for listening, and we'll see you again next time on Sip Sip Hooray.
Cheers.
Cheers.